You are listening to The Central Cast, a podcast for mystics and misfits just like you, recorded every week in Pasadena, California, before a live audience. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, we've got this turned on now. Set it down over here. I want to address the question today. It's an ambitious question. What is the meaning of life? Simple question. Yeah, we could be here for a while. What is the meaning to life, and how do we find it? Anybody ever ask themselves this question? It's obviously timeless, universal, and it's an important question because we all desire meaning and purpose. Do we not? As but Julie was sharing in her liturgy, and we often struggle to find it. And there's basically 4 different ways that we find meaning, and I want to briefly outline them here today and discuss them, maybe open up a larger conversation. Oh, thanks, Bob. And you can just leave that up the entire time. That's cool. This is my opinion, the 4 categories of meaning: the religious, the metaphysical, the social, and the material. The first 2 categories are overtly religious and spiritual in nature. The last 2 can be understood that way as well, can be understood as spiritual categories, but they tend to, they kind of cross those boundaries, and are not necessarily spiritual in nature, depending on the individual. And many of us will identify with a couple of these or all of these. And to be clear, they're not fixed categories. I think they overlap. They kind of ooze into each other. And I'm not here today, to be very clear, I'm not here today to critique one over the other or to, deny the quality of one over the other. All 4, I think, serve a purpose and work for some people and not for others. And let's begin with the religious. The traditional Christian response, because Christianity is our context here, the traditional Christian response to the question of meaning is usually this: life's meaning is to believe in God, to have a relationship with God, to worship God, to go to church, and to do His will. Period. End of story. Have you heard this before? If not explicitly, my guess is you've heard that message implicitly in the churches of your upbringing or in the culture. Life's meaning is determined by God. It's kind of this top-down meaning we don't create life's meaning. We don't find life's meaning. It is given to us by the ultimate authority on high. God Himself has made us and created everything, and therefore has determined what the purpose and nature and meaning of all things are, and it is handed down to us as pure revelation, mostly in Scripture. This is what I was raised to believe and think, that in order for life to have meaning and purpose, it has to be in some capacity, well, not in some capacity, it has to be given to us by the ultimate authority figure, God. We can't create meaning, God creates meaning. Now, this is a source of meaning that works for a lot of people, both liberal and conservative Christians alike, I would argue. It's not just an overtly conservative or fundamentalist idea. A lot of progressive and liberal Christians, I think, would still say that God and their faith in God or their relationship with God is what gives them their ultimate sense of meaning in life. And that's great, but one needs to be careful not to take that too far, as many devout people do, and say that, if you don't believe in God, then you will succumb to nihilism. Does anybody know what nihilism is? Anybody want to offer a definition of nihilism? It's kind of a big philosophical word. Yeah, exactly, Louise. Yeah. It's a belief in nothing, that life is utterly meaningless, empty and void. Morality doesn't really exist. There's no good or evil. There's just preferences. Everything is nothing. That's nihilism, basically. And a lot of devout people, both conservative and liberal, will argue that unless there is a God and unless you have faith in God, you will succumb, that nihilism is the only alternative. And again, I've heard a lot of relatively liberal Christians make these arguments, which ironically is a really nihilistic thing to say. This idea that life has no meaning unless you believe in God. By saying such things, The theists are the ones really being the nihilists, not the atheists, in my opinion. But let's say, just for the sake of argument here this morning, let's say there is no divine overseer. There is no God on high. What then? What happens to meaning? Well, interestingly, I think this is actually the greatest opportunity we can possibly have to create meaning. This is the most fertile ground for meaning, I would say. Creating meaning out of, what is more meaningful than creating meaning out of meaninglessness? Right? Think about that for a minute. What is more meaningful than creating meaning out of meaninglessness? It's like what Jesus said in Luke's gospel. If you only love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even the wicked can do that, he says. If you only lend to those whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even the wicked do that. So what? Jesus is saying. But love those who don't love you. Lend to those, not expecting anything in return. On the surface, Jesus is talking about, being gracious and generous, right? But underneath the surface, I think he's really talking about, how love is only really love if it's given unconditionally, if it's given to someone who is seemingly unworthy of it. Anybody can love somebody who loves them. That's not really love, Jesus was saying, right? For love to really be love, in the purest sense of the term, in the highest, most divine sense of the term love, for it to really be love, it must be given without why. It must be given unconditionally. It must be given to those seemingly unworthy of it. That's love, with a capital L, Jesus was saying. And I want to take some liberties with that idea a little bit here and apply it to this question of meaning. Consider for a moment that Jesus is actually giving us, albeit inadvertently, unintentionally, I would bet, he's giving us the basis for a kind of radical life philosophy, a radical life philosophy about finding meaning in the meaninglessness. In other words, perhaps the deepest kind of meaning can only be found after we have embraced the potential meaninglessness of life and being. If the deepest kind of love can only be found by loving the so-called unlovable, then the deepest kind of meaning can only be found after embracing the potential meaninglessness of life. Now, I think some personalities can handle this idea maybe better than others. Some of us can stare into the abyss and make peace with it. Others of us maybe can't, and that's okay. And that's a Nietzsche idea, right? If you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back into you. Some of us can handle that. Some of us can't, maybe. And that's okay. That doesn't make those of us abyss starers better than others. But it does mean that religion does not have the final say on life's meaning. How many churches have you heard that say that before, right? Those who say there's no meaning in life without God or faith in God are wrong. It's great that they find meaning in that. Great. But they can take it too far. And yet religion can still be a source of great meaning in our lives, even for those of us who have deconstructed, I believe, and who have stared into the abyss and felt the abyss staring into us. Even for us, there can be something really meaningful and grounding about religion, about our spiritual traditions and the stories and the teachings and the rituals involved. There's still something really meaningful and profound about being connected, I think, to a mythic community like this one. Sometimes I think the project of deconstruction goes too far in completely divesting us of our connection to the myths, to the stories, to the traditions of Christianity, whatever our religion is. These rituals, these traditions, these stories, I think, give us a sense of connection to the divine mystery that we are all immersed in and that sits at the heart of life and being. I think deconstruction can go too far in divesting us of that. And this brings me to the second category of meaning that many find meaningful, myself included, which I define as the metaphysical. This category of meaning isn't overtly religious in nature, but still really spiritual. Many of those who adhere to it do not consider themselves religious or part of any particular religion. This perspective says We are one with ultimate reality. We are one with the cosmic mind that undergirds all things and that gives life and being to all things. God, and I'm putting God in scare quotes, God in this perspective is not a being, is not a person, it's not an object somewhere out there, but rather God is the ground of being itself, the mystery that we live and move and have our being in. He's the beingness of beings. Words fail us here. I'm trying to use English words to describe what is ultimately indescribable, but this is kind of a mystical or metaphysical perspective that I find meaning in. And this is actually an ancient idea found in a variety of religions and spiritual traditions, including, of course, Christianity. And again, it's this idea that we are cosmic and transcendent in nature simply because we are here, we are alive, we are aware, we are conscious, feeling, thinking parts of the universe. You ever think about that? That's incredible. How did atoms come together to form, I don't know, feeling, living, thinking atoms? We are essentially stardust, stars that became living, thinking, feeling objects. That's incredible. There's something inherently transcendent and I think meaningful about that. And for me, this means we are inherently beautiful and mysterious in nature, beyond measure. We are not isolated and alienated beings disconnected from the cosmos and each other. Not really. We may feel that way sometimes, but we are not really isolated and alienated beings disconnected from the cosmos and each other. We are, in fact, one. We are one with all things. We are, to put it simply, we are the universe experiencing itself. We are not just fragments of the universe. We are the universe experiencing itself as a human being, this rock floating through space. I mean, that is wild. And for me, that is an inherently transcendent, meaningful idea. It makes us beautiful and rare and wonderful and precious, even though there's like 7 billion of us and there's animals and there's ants and but it's all one consciousness and awareness and the universe experiencing itself in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different forms. That's incredible. We are the universe experiencing itself. Again, yes, we are a tiny fragment of the universe, but we are connected to the whole in the same way that a wave on the ocean isn't really an individual object, but is the ocean itself being manifested in a certain way at a certain place and time. And just as a wave dies, so to speak, and dissipates back into the ocean from which it rose, so we are forever connected to the cosmic mind, the cosmic awareness from which we rose. Death, therefore, I believe, death is just the end of a particular wave function. But who we fundamentally are is the unborn and undying essence of reality, the unborn and undying cosmic awareness, cosmic mind, cosmic consciousness that sits at the heart of all things. Again, this view is fairly post-religious, post-theistic, post-theological, but it is very metaphysical, right? And still very spiritual. And for me, this idea, am I 100% certain of it? No. Am I 100% certain of anything? No. But this is where I lean today, and this metaphysical idea gives me a lot of sense of meaning and beauty and depth, I feel. Just as it did for many in the ancient world. This is not New Age philosophy. This is ancient thought, going at least all the way back to Plato. The third category of meaning is what I call the social. And I think it's one that we all find meaning in, regardless of our religious, spiritual, or metaphysical persuasion or lack thereof. I think we all find deep meaning in our relationships. To be human, right, I think is to be a social animal. So therefore, we find meaning in relationships and our connections to others. And this, I think, is perhaps the deepest source of meaning of all, the sense of connection we have to others. And I would also include here the sense of meaning we get from our political engagements, because you think about what is politics, if not, the lived out social dynamics of our community and society and culture. That is politics, what we do collectively together, the decisions we make, the social decisions we make in each other's lives, the structures we create, the social structures we create in our communities. That is politics. So I'm lumping in politics here. The fact is, again, we are social animals, period, full stop. We are social animals. All apes are. There is nothing really more important to our health and well-being than the connections we have with others. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a psychologist who would disagree with that. That, again, there is really nothing more important to our health and well-being, mentally, perhaps physically, than our connection and the relationships we have with others. To put it more simply, what is more important than love? Thank you, Ellie. What is more important in our lives than love, than the meaningful, life-giving, joyous, loving connections we have with others? What is more important than trying to make our community, our world, as loving, just, and joyful for as many people as possible? What's more important than that? This is the power of the social category, and it can be understood as not really distinct from the religious or the spiritual, depending on your persuasion. Consider that as Christians, our own scriptures tell us there's nothing greater than love, right? For God is love, we're told in 1 John. And I like what Jack Caputo does with that scripture. If God is love, then love is God, right? If A equals B, then B must equal A. If God is love, then love is God. This is saying something profound about the human experience of love and connection, right? This idea that the divine is found in us and in each other as we connect in loving ways with each other. And that can happen in a variety of ways, right? But it is ultimately those connections, that sense of being connected to others, that is the most meaningful part of our lives, I think. The final category of meaning I want us to look at this morning is the material. And this has to do with really how we can find meaning in virtually anything we love and value in life. It can be our work, it can be a hobby, it can be an art form, it can be whatever. As many of you know, I'm a hospice chaplain. And I had a patient recently, 95-year-old man. And he didn't pass away yet. He came off service because if you're doing too well in hospice, they take you off service. At 95, they're like, you're not going to die anytime soon. You're doing pretty good, buddy. So he came off service. But before that, I would meet with him periodically in his home. And, one of the questions I usually ask my patients is, what gives you joy? What gives you meaning at this point in your life? And every time I asked him, he would tell me, for me, it was, and even now, it's thinking back about sports. He loved to play, it was basketball, baseball, and running track. And he had pictures of himself, black and white photos from the 1940s of him running track at USC. And he would just talk about how much he enjoyed playing sports. And it struck me in that moment, like, he's being sincere. What gave him the most joy and meaning in his life was playing baseball, basketball, and running track. And to some, that could seem really trivial, right? I mean, he had a wife. She was there too. And I don't know if he got in trouble for saying, she was like, what am I, chopped liver? I'm sure he would say, oh yeah, her, absolutely, yeah. But anyway, when you're 95, you can say whatever the hell you want, I guess. But he talked about the thing that gave him the most joy and meaning in his life was what he could physically do with his body and compete and be out there with his friends in the sun and doing the things that he loved. And yeah, to some that would be like, oh, this is trivial. He's talking about basketball, baseball, and track. But consider that it's the little things. I know it's cliche to say that. It's the little things that matter, but it's really true. It's not trivial. Finding meaning in the so-called trivial things is really the key to joy in life. One of the keys, I guess we might say. Finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. You've heard that before. Finding the extraordinary in the ordinary, because the ordinary really is extraordinary, I believe. But being able to do that is really an incredible incredible gift and something I think that is an important life skill. So that's kind of the fourth and final category of meaning that I have for you today. The fact is, we human beings are meaning-making machines, are we not? We are really capable of creating meaning out of nothing and finding meaning in whatever we choose, which is an incredibly wonderful and powerful gift. I don't know, maybe it has something to do with what it means to be, in the imago Dei, in the image of God. This ability to create something out of nothing, to create meaning out of nothing. I don't know. The trick is to find what works for you. So the natural discussion question I have for you today to kind of maybe hopefully spark a conversation is, what works for you? How do you find meaning? What do you find meaning in? What gives you a sense of joy? What gives you a sense of purpose in your life? Which of these four categories do you identify with best? The religious, the metaphysical, the social, the material. Yeah. What resonates with you here today? Anybody? Yeah, Sarah, let me get the mic for you. I knew how to turn this on once. Where's the button on this? Oh, there it is. I found it. I don't know why sometimes I forget where the button is on that. Okay, here we go. There you go.
I read this thing one time that I loved that said God wanted to experience himself as human with all the faults and the weaknesses. And so here we are.
Yeah.
And if you think about it through that lens, then all of those categories are holy because everything human, in my opinion, is then holy. If God wanted to experience the humanness, and that's what we are, then everything human is holy.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I really loved that, and I like to think of that a lot.
And it's a beautiful thing to meditate on. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Akila.
Oh, I was gonna say what I thought was interesting about your last example with the guy with the sports was that it incorporated all of the things because it was social. As a person who has done some sporty things in my life, it can become metaphysical and religious kind of thing. So I thought that was fascinating. I thought you were gonna say something about money and material goods. And
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
I
I had a hard time coming up with the material. When we hear the word, we think of materialism, right? Yeah.
yeah, so I was surprised by your example, so it gave me a lot to think about. That was it.
Okay, thanks, Akila. Yeah. Somebody else say, what do you find meaning in? Purpose, joy. Maybe it fluctuates day to day.
Yeah, I love what you said, Sarah. I think that's to me, when I look at these categories and as you were first, the categories made sense to me. And then as you started moving along, I was like, oh, actually, I think these categories are a function of having grown up with a very limited theology in the first place, right? That the religious or the sacred would be separate from the metaphysical, the social, and the material. And for me, I experienced that most as the sacredness of community. That's what, if I'm in a funk or something, I check in with myself. Have you left the house? Have you talked to another human, stranger or friend? And it's that connection that for me brings me back to that imago Dei and gives me a sense of joy and meaning and purpose.
Thank you. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, Rodney.
See if I can articulate all the thoughts going through my head. Your talks are just too thought-provoking here.
Oh, well, thank you.
I feel like every time I speak, I preface it with that.
I'll try to dial that back for you.
Exactly. I mean, you said it at the beginning, what's the meaning of life?
Yeah, right.
So some years ago, Frida and I went through this, and some of you might be familiar with the Landmark Forum. It's like a weekend retreat, and you lock yourself in a room sort of with 200 people. Wow. You go through this all-day seminar on Saturday and Sunday, and at the end of it, basically you come out with the conclusion is that life is empty and meaningless. And so you're sitting in a room with all these people, and you went through this 2.5-day seminar, and you're just like, what? Oh my gosh, they're right. But the point of it is that, or one of the points, and you said this, we as humans are meaning making machines. Like we make things mean things.
Yeah.
So we create meaning. So where I am now is, as far as the meaning of life, it's pretty much all social. Because in the midst of my belief that life is ultimately empty and meaningless, I've arrived at, well, I love people, and that's my thing. So what I make life mean is relationships with other people.
Yeah.
So life really means whatever you decide that it means, because we are little gods, so we get to create meaning.
There you go.
Because that's what we're going to do anyway. So life means whatever you decide that it means. If you say it's empty and meaningless, cool. That's what it is.
Yeah.
If you say it means your career, that's what it means. If you say it means love, that's what it means. So for me, because I'm social, I agree with whatever you tell me life means for you. You know what I mean? Like that's what it means for me, is to love you and agree with whatever you tell me life means for you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. Thank you. No, that was really honest. I appreciate the vulnerability of that comment as well, talking about your own experience with meaninglessness and your embrace of that too. That's really powerful. It's probably why you're here.
Exactly.
Like why
Exactly.
Peter Rollins was talking about lack last week. His work has had a lot of impact on me in that regard. But no, it's really good. I'm reminded of a poem by, might have been Soren Kierkegaard under a pen name, Silesius something or other. Anyway, I've shared it before, but it goes, the rose is without why. It blossoms because it blossoms, cares not for itself, asks not if it is seen. And it's this idea of contemplating beauty for the sake of beauty itself. A rose blossoms, you come across a beautiful flower in a garden, and it's just there. It in essence, now we know, okay, if you want to get like all scientific, the rose blossoms to attract insects, pollinators, okay. But there's this idea of meditating on beauty in our environment and how beauty just shows up, and it's without why. It's just there. And it's this idea that we can be that way too. We can live kind of unconditionally and without why, and just a radical yes to life for the sake of life itself. Yeah. Is there anything more beautiful and meaningful and deeper than that? To say, this all might be for nothing. There might be no inherent meaning. There may be nothing waiting for me on the other side.
Yep.
But I am going to say yes to life and love others and try to make beauty and joy in this life and world for myself. That is like the ultimate courageous act and beautiful act. If everything was given, if it, you know what I mean? If it was like, oh, God says there's meaning, so, it's given to you like a cookie to a child, you didn't have to work for it. It's just, I don't know. There's something more beautiful about what you're describing and what the philosophers that I'm describing have described. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that poem. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the great paradox. Like you said, how miraculous are we as humans that we're this group of atoms thinking, feeling, with all that.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, I'm a miracle.
Yes.
Along with the other 8 billion people in the world.
And the rest of the ecosystem, the plants and the insects and the animals. It's all incredible that we're here, and that atoms and molecules seemingly under the power of their own volition came together to form living, thinking, breathing, self-reflecting aspects, nature within nature. I mean, it's just deeply mysterious, and I think inherently, whether we ever figure it out or I don't think we ever will, but it's transcendent, it's beautiful, it's meaningful. That's my thoughts on it. But anybody want to react to that? Yeah, Emily. I mean, you can. Not going to say you can't.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be all my fault.
Mhm.
I guess I'll just stand here. So I missed some of it for those chasing the tiny person around. But what was your example for material, quickly?
It can be anything, basically anything we find in our environment. So I use the example of a hospice patient of mine who found meaning in basketball, baseball, and running track.
Okay.
But it can be your hobby. It can be an art form, whatever.
So I was thinking like the thing that gives my life the most meaning, which I think sort of encompasses all of these things, is charity, which like not only for like animals, but also for like people.
So like a girl that I went to high school with is battling breast cancer and her husband's on disability, and they put out a GoFundMe and just, she responded after we hadn't talked in a long time. And so that sort of created like a social aspect, a community aspect. It also creates like an individual feeling aspect, right? Like I get to like give her something that she needs and she gets to receive something that she needs. So then she feels, things. And so I think like, I don't know when evil started, right? Like as a people, right? Like as a humankind, like we've always, because Julie said something about lacking this morning. I think most of us have that in common. Even if we seemingly have everything, we're still lacking in something, right? So like that's what everyone has in common. And if we all came together to give the gifts that we have that you may not have, and then vice versa, we could all sort of take care of each other. And then we could essentially make the world different. We could make it better. We could combat what is today these evils which to me is the 1%, buying everything and forcing you to give money to things that you don't feel in your heart are okay. And we're forced to basically constantly choose between the lesser of all evils. Like I don't really feel like there's one thing you can do today, whether it's spend money or, like in your daily life or whatever, you're always giving money to these people and you're always sort of helping them to maintain their ways. They're also lacking, but they're not tangible to the rest of us. And so we can't get to them, but we can get to each other. You know what I mean? So it's like it's tangible. It's religious to take care of other people who don't have, right? And that's also material because you're using money or you're using your gifts or you're using something, a hug or whatever it is. That's like the thing that like makes me feel the most meaning, you know all the time, holidays or not, or whatever. But, obviously holidays, there's more
Thanks so much.
spiritual humanness, I guess.
Yeah. I'm with you. Thanks.
I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No,
Like I said, I didn't. I missed a lot, so I have no idea.
Oh, you're good. I keep hearing today, I don't know about you, do you keep hearing that we're in a meaning crisis as a civilization? I keep hearing that. And I think part of the reason why I'm, with the news this morning, just another mass shooting, and then how we're constantly being exposed to one kind of tragedy after another, and the rise of authoritarianism and fascism in our society. And I think to some degree to live in the modern world is to kind of be in a meaning crisis. And so talks like this today, I think, are becoming more and more important. Maybe prior to the modern era, when we all lived in small little villages and communities, mostly agrarian, living hand to mouth, subsistence farmers, these questions of meaning and purpose weren't so diabolical and of concern, because the meaning was right there in front of you every day. You gotta you, you, you gotta survive, and you're literally out there in the field every day helping the people in your immediate little village eat and survive and make it through the winter. And higher questions of what life's meaning and purpose just maybe didn't bother people as much back then as they do now. But here we are, immersed online and every day with the deluge of news on tragedy. We have no idea what to do with, and it's just emotional overload constantly because of the world that we live in and the things we're exposed to. And so I hope that coming and being a part of a spiritual community like this one is life-giving and meaning-giving, and a place of respite and an oasis in a world that feels utterly out of control and full of meaninglessness and emptiness and terror and stress. And I hope that you are inspired here today and always to find beauty and meaning and purpose in your existence and in your life in whatever capacity you can, and to be there for each other and to help each other to find meaning and beauty and purpose in each other's lives. I hope that for us. For me, that's kind of why we do this, is creating a little oasis in the desert. All right. Good stuff, everybody. With that, let us finish with our uplifting joint benediction. Let's say this together now. As we go from this place, we commit ourselves to the path of love, honesty, and humility. We dedicate ourselves as Christ did. to the cause of justice and the courageous embrace of this life, this world, and each other. Amen. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. See you again, hopefully next week. All right. You're welcome. Thanks for listening in on this week's edition of the Central Cast. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you join us next time. Bye-bye.